The city of Lagos sparkled with Christmas lights, music, and laughter, but inside one quiet mansion, Amara packed her small suitcase in tears. Her heart ached as she folded her few clothes, knowing she was leaving the only home she had ever known. Her father, Chief Obinna, once her biggest hero, now stood cold and silent beside his new wife, Tamoa, a woman who treated Amara like she didn't belong. "You'll have to make space for family that actually belongs here," Tamoa said with a cruel smile. Amara looked at her father, hoping he would defend her, but he said nothing. That silence hurt more than any words. As she walked out into the cool Christmas Eve air, the mansion behind her glowed with lights and laughter that no longer included her. She remembered how her late mother used to sing carols and cook jollof by the fire every Christmas. Those days were gone. Amara dragged her suitcase down the empty street, tears mixing with the night breeze. It felt like the world had turned its back on her. But what she didn't know was that life had already prepared a surprise, something powerful that would change everything. Somewhere in her inbox, buried among old emails, waited a message that would turn her pain into power and reveal a truth her father had tried to bury. That night, she thought she had lost everything. But destiny was only beginning to unwrap her real Christmas gift. Amara sat alone in a small, dimly lit guest house on the edge of Lagos, the sound of Christmas carols and fireworks drifting in from the busy streets outside. Families were celebrating, laughter filled the air, and the smell of roasted meat and jollof rice floated through the windows. But for Amara, Christmas felt like a cruel joke. Just last year, she had been surrounded by warmth, her mother's songs, and the glow of family love. Now, she was alone, clutching her pillow as tears soaked through it. The bed was hard, the room smelled of damp wood, and the only light came from a flickering bulb. Still, somewhere deep inside, a tiny spark refused to die. She thought about her father's silence as Tamoa threw her out. The pain in her chest turned to anger, but also strength. She whispered to herself, "I will rise again. I don't need them." She didn't know how or when, but she promised that she would build a new life from the ground up, even if no one believed in her. As the night stretched on, she stared at the ceiling, replaying every memory of her late mother, her laughter, her voice, her words of comfort. Her mother used to tell her, "Amara, storms don't last forever. You will shine again." The next morning, she woke up with swollen eyes but a new sense of calm. She brewed a cup of cheap instant coffee and sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through her old emails on her cracked phone. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for, maybe a distraction from the pain, maybe hope. Then, she saw it. A message she had never noticed before. The subject line read, "Confidential, for Miss Amara Obinna only." It was from a law firm in Abuja. Her heart skipped a beat. The email had been sent weeks before she was thrown out of her home. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. For a moment, she wondered if it was a mistake or a scam. But then she saw her full name, her mother's name, and legal documents attached. The lawyer's message was brief but serious, asking her to contact their office urgently about a matter concerning her late mother's estate. Amara's eyes widened, her breath quickened. She read the email again and again, trying to make sense of it. Why had she never seen this before? Had someone been hiding it from her? Suddenly, her sadness turned into curiosity, then into fierce determination. Maybe this was the reason her father had been so cold. Maybe there was something her mother left behind, something he didn't want her to find. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt a spark of hope. She didn't have money, she didn't have a home, but she had something far more powerful, the truth waiting to be discovered. She closed her phone, wiped her tears, and whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning." Amara sat frozen on the edge of her bed, staring at the email on her cracked phone screen. Her hands trembled as she scrolled slowly, afraid she was dreaming. The message was from a law firm in Abuja, written in formal English that felt both distant and heavy. But the words that stood out made her heart race. "Your late mother, Mrs. Nneka Obinna, left behind a sealed inheritance in your name." Amara blinked, reading it again and again. An inheritance? From her mother? She had never heard a single word about it. Her mind spun. The letter explained that her mother had not only left her money but also shares in her father's company, the Obina Group, shares that were worth millions. Amara gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. It didn't make sense. Why would her father never tell her about this? He had always acted like everything belonged to him, like her mother's life and work were only side notes to his success. The law firm mentioned that the will was sealed years ago, right after her mother's death, and that Chief Obina himself had taken possession of the documents. They had tried to reach Amara several times but never got a reply. The messages must have been intercepted, someone had blocked every attempt to contact her. Amara's chest tightened as she thought of all the times her stepmother, Tamoa, had taken her father's phone or redirected letters that came to the house. Could Tamoa have known? Or was it her father all along? The thought that her own father could betray her like that sent chills down her spine. She felt a storm of emotions, confusion, anger, grief, but also a strange, burning clarity. Her mother's last act of love had been hidden from her. The woman who had raised her, who had believed in her, had left her a legacy, and her father had buried it. She clicked on the attachment, and there it was, a scanned copy of the will. Her mother's signature sat at the bottom, elegant and familiar. Amara traced it with her finger on the screen, tears welling in her eyes. The will clearly stated that a large percentage of the company's shares and assets were to go directly to Amara upon her mother's passing. It was her rightful inheritance, her mother's way of securing her daughter's future. But that future had been stolen. At the bottom of the email was a single, haunting sentence from the lawyer, "Miss Amara, you are the rightful heir." Those words echoed in her head like a heartbeat. Her anger turned into strength. All the pain, the humiliation, the cold nights in the guesthouse, suddenly, they meant something. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't unwanted. She was the rightful heir to everything her mother had built. Amara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The truth had finally found her. She stood up, wiped her tears, and whispered, "You tried to erase me, but you can't hide the truth forever." That night, Amara didn't sleep. She planned. Because now she knew, this Christmas, everything was about to change. A few days later, the city of Lagos was alive with music, parties, and flashing lights. It was Christmas morning, and everyone seemed to be celebrating, everyone except Amara. She walked slowly down the familiar street that led to her father's mansion, the same place she had been thrown out of not long ago. Her hands were stuffed into her coat pockets, her eyes hidden behind dark glasses. When she reached the tall golden gates, she stopped. Laughter and music poured out from the mansion like a cruel reminder of what she had lost. The sweet smell of roasted turkey and champagne drifted into the air. Inside, her father's grand Christmas brunch was in full swing. Expensive cars lined the driveway, photographers snapped pictures of Lagos' richest families, and her father stood beside his glamorous wife, Tamoa, smiling proudly for the cameras. Guests raised glasses and called him a man of success, unaware that the empire he built was built on a lie. Amara stood across the street, watching quietly. To the world, her father looked like a man who had everything. But she knew the truth now, and that truth was powerful. In her small bag were copies of documents the lawyer had sent her, her mother's will, company records, and emails that revealed how her father had hidden everything from her. She had spent the last few days gathering proof, reading through every line, every clause. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that her father had betrayed not only her but also the woman who had loved him the most, her mother. He had taken her mother's ideas, her patents, and her shares, then erased her name from history. Amara's blood boiled each time she read another document. But instead of anger, she felt something stronger, control. For the first time, she held the truth in her hands. Through the tall gates, she saw Tamoa laughing loudly, wearing a red dress covered in diamonds. Her stepbrothers ran around showing off new iPhones and designer gifts. Her father smiled at them with pride, pretending that his first daughter no longer existed. Amara felt a sting in her heart, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. She simply whispered to herself, "Keep smiling, Papa. Your picture-perfect Christmas won't last forever." She walked away from the gate, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, her heart calm but determined. Each step she took was filled with quiet strength. She no longer wanted pity or love from a man who had chosen greed over blood. She had something better, justice. As she disappeared into the busy street, the sound of laughter from the mansion faded behind her. Her phone buzzed with a new message from the lawyer confirming her next meeting about the case. Amara smiled faintly. Her father didn't know it yet, but the same girl he had cast aside on Christmas Eve was about to return with the truth, and this time, she wouldn't leave quietly. Amara spent the next few days in silence, sitting in a small cafe with her laptop open and papers spread across the table. Her coffee went cold as she read through every file the lawyer had sent. The deeper she dug, the clearer the truth became. Her father's success story was built on lies. Each document she opened felt like a punch to the chest. It turned out that the foundation of his company, the famous Obina Group, wasn't his idea at all. The eco-energy design that had made him one of Lagos' richest men was actually her mother's creation. Years before she died, her mother had filed a patent under her own name, hoping to build something that would help Nigeria move toward clean energy. But after her death, Chief Obina had erased every trace of her from the records and claimed the design as his own. Amara's hands shook as she scrolled through scanned copies of contracts, signatures, and old company memos. The lies went back years. Her father had presented himself as a self-made man, giving speeches about innovation and leadership, while the real genius, her mother, had been forgotten. Even the company's slogan, the one painted on every building, had been written in her mother's handwriting in an old notebook Amara still kept. The realization hit her like thunder. Her father hadn't just betrayed her, he had betrayed the woman who built his empire. Amara leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding. Her mother had always been quiet, humble, and deeply kind. She had believed that her husband loved her and that together they were building something meaningful. But now Amara saw it for what it really was, theft. Her mother's brilliance had been stolen by the man she trusted the most. Tears filled Amara's eyes, but this time, they weren't from sadness. They were from rage. She whispered softly, "You took everything from her, but not for long." That night, Amara returned to her guest house and laid all the papers out on the bed. It looked like a battlefield of truth, documents, emails, photos, and legal statements. The evidence was undeniable. If she exposed this, it would destroy her father's empire overnight. His reputation, his wealth, his image, all of it would crumble. The world would finally see who he really was. For a moment, Amara hesitated. Part of her still remembered the man who used to lift her on his shoulders and call her his little star. But that man was gone. In his place stood someone who had chosen greed over love, lies over loyalty. As she packed the documents into a neat folder, Amara felt something shift inside her. She was no longer the broken girl who cried on Christmas Eve. She was her mother's daughter, strong, smart, and fearless. Looking out the window at the Lagos skyline, she whispered, "This secret built your empire, Papa. But now, it's going to bring it down." The night was warm and glowing with lights as another grand Christmas Eve party began at the Obina mansion. Guests arrived in shiny cars, dressed in their finest clothes. Laughter and music filled the air as photographers snapped pictures of Lagos' most powerful people. Chief Obina stood at the center of it all, smiling proudly beside his elegant wife, Tomoa. It was the same night, 1 year ago, when he had turned his back on his only daughter. But he didn't think about that anymore. He believed the past was buried. What he didn't know was that his past was on its way to his front gate. A black SUV pulled up quietly outside the mansion. The engine stopped, and the crowd turned their heads. Out stepped a woman in a sleek black suit, her hair pulled neatly back, her heels clicking confidently on the marble path. It was Amara. The same girl who had once walked away with tears in her eyes now carried herself like she owned the world. The security guards froze, unsure what to do. Inside, the band stopped playing as whispers spread across the room. "Is that Amara?" someone murmured. Tomoa's face turned pale. "What's she doing here?" she hissed, clutching her pearls as if they could protect her. Chief Obina's smile faded slowly, replaced by shock. He hadn't seen his daughter in a year, not since the night she left with nothing. But this woman standing before him was not the same broken girl. Amara's confidence filled the room like fire. She walked straight toward him, her heels echoing against the floor. Every eye followed her as she stopped in front of her father. With a calm smile, she handed him a neatly wrapped gift box. "Merry Christmas, Daddy," she said softly. Her voice was steady, her eyes cold but calm. "I came to deliver your Christmas present." The room fell silent. Even the waiters stopped moving. Chief Obina hesitated, then slowly opened the box. Inside, under the shiny wrapping paper, were a few neatly folded documents. At first, he didn't understand. Then his face went pale. It was a copy of his late wife's will, and official court papers stamped with bold letters naming Amara Obina as the new CEO of Obina Group. Gasps filled the air. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned in, whispering. Tomoa's mouth hung open. Chief Obina's hands trembled as he stared at the papers. "Amara, what is this?" he asked, his voice weak. Amara looked straight at him, her smile calm and steady. "It's the truth, Papa," she said quietly. "The gift you've been hiding for years." For a long moment, no one spoke. The music had stopped. The once proud man stood frozen in front of the daughter he had abandoned. And as Amara turned to leave, her voice carried softly through the stunned crowd. "Merry Christmas, everyone. It's time to celebrate a new beginning." The grand hall of the Obina mansion, once filled with laughter and Christmas carols, went completely silent. All eyes were fixed on the small stack of papers in the lawyer's hand. The clinking of glasses stopped, the music faded, and even the air seemed to freeze. Chief Obina stood motionless, his face pale, his mouth slightly open as the lawyer began to read the contents of the documents Amara had delivered. Each word fell like thunder in the quiet room. The guests, Lagos' most powerful business leaders and socialites, listened in disbelief. The lawyer's voice was calm but firm as he read from the official papers. The documents proved that Amara's late mother was the true founder of Obina Group and that her will had been hidden for years. The crowd gasped when the lawyer revealed that, following a recent court ruling, all assets and accounts connected to the company had been frozen pending investigation. Amara was now the legal owner of 65% of the company's shares. Cameras flashed as journalists whispered among themselves, capturing every shocked expression. Chief Obina's empire, his pride, his reputation, everything he had built, was collapsing right in front of everyone. Chief Obina's hands shook as he reached for the papers, his voice trembling. "Amara, you don't understand," he began, but Amara's calm eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw the strength of the woman standing before him. She did understand, she understood everything. The betrayal, the lies, the years of silence. And now, she also understood her own power. The room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered behind their glasses, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. Tomoa's face turned red with rage. "This can't be real," she shouted, grabbing one of the documents from the lawyer's hand. But it was real, every stamp, every signature, every seal was official. Her sons started crying, one yelling that Christmas was ruined, while she stormed out of the hall, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. Chief Obina tried to speak again, reaching out toward Amara as if his touch could change what was happening. Please, Amara, listen to me, he said quietly, his voice breaking. But Amara didn't flinch. She simply looked at him with calm eyes that showed neither hate nor pity. You taught me how to be strong, she said softly. You just didn't expect me to use that strength against your lies. The cameras flashed again, catching the exact moment when the once mighty Chief Obinna lowered his head, defeated. Reporters were already calling it the fall of Lagos' most powerful man. Amara turned slowly toward the crowd, her chin lifted high, a small smile on her face. Christmas isn't ruined, she said clearly, her voice steady and full of quiet power. It's just beginning. The hall stayed silent for a moment, and then, somewhere outside, fireworks lit up the night sky. That night, Lagos sparkled beneath the stars, and Amara sat alone in her new office on the top floor of Obinna Group. The city lights stretched endlessly before her, glowing just like the dreams she once thought she'd lost. Her desk was covered with documents and flowers from well-wishers, but her focus was elsewhere. Her phone buzzed non-stop with calls and messages, journalists wanted interviews, shareholders wanted meetings, and old friends suddenly wanted to reconnect. She looked at the screen for a moment, then turned it face down. None of them mattered tonight. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small golden locket, worn from years of use. It was her mother's, the only thing she had kept through everything. She opened it gently and smiled through tears. Inside was a tiny folded note in her mother's handwriting: "Never let anyone make you forget whose daughter you are." Amara ran her fingers over the words, her heart full. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace. She walked to the window, looking out at the same city that had once felt too big for her. Now, it was hers to conquer. Her reflection stared back, not the broken girl from last Christmas, but a woman who had faced the truth and won. Her father's empire was gone, but she didn't feel joy in his downfall. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted justice. Before she left the office, Amara typed one last message and sent it to her father. It read, "I've unwrapped your secret. Now you can live with it." Then she smiled softly and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Mom." Outside, fireworks burst across the sky, a new beginning, bright and unstoppable, just like her.